beautiful time this has been. And it's my sincere privilege and honor to welcome Mr. Ronnie McCoury. I think I can say pretty clearly that anything that I've done for the last 25 years of my life is largely Ronnie's fault. In the most inspired manner. Yeah, just a hero of mine and a hero for the music, for sure.
Thanks.
So yeah, I guess we're going to pick a little, and as always, anybody wants to talk about anything, mandolins, or the weather, or any of that good stuff, you know, we're here, but...
How the weather affects badly.
Exactly. We were just in the air conditioner RVs, so I think we're gonna.
Pete Roble left some Toy Story.
Do the Watsons?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. You want to tell them the story behind that one, as we know from the great recording with Bill and Doc?
Please do.
There's a great recording of that in the Smithsonian Folkways Library. And Bill says something like, you know, I'm always trying to come up with something new in the way of bluegrass music. Right?
That's right.
He says, I wrote this little number here, and Doc put a wonderful run, which is the guitar run we're doing. And Bill says, so I titled it The Watson's Blues.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anybody ever heard that tune before?
Oh yeah.
Okay, okay. Now they're starting to wake up.
Yeah, now we're getting there. Getting into the climate of it all. Anybody have a mandolin question, query, discussion?
Here's one over here.
Could you talk about like maybe playing like major versus minor in like maybe an open or closed position? And how you maybe blend them or how you approach it?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. You know, major or minor, talking about in terms of note choices and solo and in a melody against something that is, let's say the tune is major, like we were just playing, you know, a blues of sorts, which is in E major, another scale, the major scale there, but to imply the blues, you add in the flatted third instead of the major third, or the flatted fifth instead of the major fifth, and the lowered seventh instead of the major seventh. So this E chord, if you think of that as your tonal center, we can play all they stay in the diatonic major scale. In other words, you're playing all the quote-unquote right notes, classically. But in terms of blues, or this, you know, a big part of the bluegrass language is adding in those so you're essentially implying, if this is an E major chord, an E minor chord against it, which creates that dissonance and tension that gives you the blues. Does that speak to your question in a way?
What he said. You're a lot better at explaining than I am. You are.
Well, it's you know, the question of, you know, major versus minor. Does anybody understand what that means? If you look up, you know, the Beethoven Symphony in D minor, well, what does it mean? You know, in our Western music system, we've settled on, you know, going back about 350 years, a two tonalities where something is in a major key, it's nice and happy, or it's in a darker, sadder, minor kind of a key. That's where we've landed. There are many in between, and this is, I guess, further theory that we maybe want to go into, but Bill Monroe particularly used to speak about the ancient tones in bluegrass music, because there's another in between major and minor that we refer to as something having a modal quality, which you find in archaic old music, but in particular in Celtic traditional music, Irish and Scottish, tunes like that is in a quality of E minor, but it's a modal Celtic old style sound,
Yeah.
you know, that remains.
Awesome.
Stylistically, when do you make your decision to start adding blue notes to whatever song it is? Or do you say, you know, are there some songs and stuff, but I'm not going to add any blue notes at all, but I'm going to stay right on the major? How do you make that decision, you personally, to start adding flat trees, just like that.
Well, I guess a lot of it has to do with the feel of the song, to me. Happy tunes, like he said, don't have many blue notes in them. I don't play a lot of happy tunes myself, and the music we do with my dad and anything else, there's not it's kind of happy, but it's sad at the same time. So we put quite a few blue notes in it. It's just where I don't know what would decide it. If I heard the melody of a new song, that would make me decide what I wanted to do with it. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think that's an excellent point. Is when you ask how do you make that decision? Well, when you're improvising anyhow, it's sort of spur of the moment. What do I want to say? But what is appropriate? And of course, it depends on how far maybe out do you want to go? To use a jazz term, how far away do you want to take it, or how close to home do you want it to be? I'm just thinking of let's do a couple bars of, let's say, Angela and the Baker. To me, this is a beautiful major melody that would really put a lot of.